Welcome to the training, How to Fill Out a Chain of Custody Form, brought to you by the State Environmental Laboratory Services Division. This training will describe how to complete a PreLog chain of custody and an ad hoc chain of custody. This chain of custody training is targeted to DEQ divisional staff. Samples for project plans, investigations, environmental complaints, situations where laboratory staff are providing collection assistance, emergency response samples, etc. Ad hoc samples are samples collected as needed and typically aren't planned, or the customer has time constraints that prevent contacting the lab beforehand for paperwork. As long as the customer has a chain of custody and correct sampling containers, this is acceptable, but if possible, please contact the lab prior to sample collection or delivery so that we may assist. The ad hoc COC can be printed and used at any time. We have copies available in the laboratory, or one can be printed from our website. When possible, the lab will provide pre-logged sample paperwork. Here are a few reasons that we have updated our previous form: to collect new, required information, added features, and design improvements. The chain of custody is a required form for all samples submitted to the laboratory. It tells us necessary information about your sample so that we can process and analyze it properly. In order to accept your samples, we need the information on the form. How do you get a chain of custody form? For an ad hoc form, you can print one from our website or pick one up from our sample management area located on the first floor of the DEQ building. For a pre-logged form, you can contact the lab via phone or email and we can gather some preliminary information about your needs and send sampling materials like containers, labels, instructions, and a chain of custody form. If you go this route, you will receive partially completed chain of custody form that contains the information you provided to our staff, but you will still need to complete a few pieces of information before submitting your sample for analysis. We will cover both forms in the following slides. Here is a completely blank ad hoc chain of custody form, also known as a COC, printed from our website. If you need to collect samples quickly and cannot wait to contact the laboratory for paperwork and collection containers beforehand, you can print this form from the website and keep a few on hand. However, you will need to be especially detailed and thorough with an ad hoc chain of custody to ensure all required and pertinent information is recorded. The areas indicated in green will be information that you, the customer or sampler, will need to complete on an ad hoc chain of custody. We will cover these areas in the next few slides. The areas in red are for lab use only. First, fill out the customer information section in the top right corner. Print your first and last name in the customer name field. If you have a description for your project, print it in the project description field. Customers who submit samples frequently like to use this to tell their sampling events apart by giving them different descriptions. Or alternatively, some project managers use the sample descriptions to keep ongoing project data linked by using the same descriptor over and over. Next, in the sample information box on top of the sample rows, fill out the collector's name or initials in the sample collection by area. Add a current contact phone number for the collector in case there are any questions about the samples or any missing information on the form. If you have any special collection notes about your samples, please write them in the collection notes area. If there is an associated complaint number from EMS, record that number here. All complaints must have a number recorded either at the time of receipt or provided within 24 hours via email to sample management staff. Or you may describe any issues you are having that prompted you to collect the samples. As you collect your samples, fill in a line for each container you collect. In the sample address and location box, print the address or general location where you are collecting your sample and print the specific location where you took the sample. After you collect your sample, fill in the date and time and circle AM or PM. In the requested analyses box, write the name of the analysis you are requesting for that container. Multiple analyses can be requested if the container volume allows. You can look at our fee schedule online for analysis names or methods, or call our lab phone number to ask our staff for assistance. Now we will describe how to complete a prelogged sample chain of custody. Prelogged chain of custody forms can be provided for a variety of project types. If you know the contact information for the customer or person who will receive the lab report, the scope or nature of the sampling event, how many sample sites and the testing requested, the lab can log your samples ahead of time and provide partially completed paperwork. If you know your sample address or site info, we can populate that as well, but it is not required to prelog samples. Prelogging provides enhanced traceability since each test and sample container is already present on the form. Customer information is already completed on prelogged projects and samples. If provided, a description for the project will show in the project description field. Descriptions can be used to tell sampling events apart. For example, March 2020 or metal recycling plant. If you have a project plan on file with the lab, the project description from that paperwork will be used. Next, in the sample information box on top of the sample rows, fill out the collector's name or initials in the sample collection by area. Add a current contact phone number for the collector in case there are any questions about the samples or any missing information on the form. If you have any special collection notes about your samples, please write them in the collection notes area. If you have an EMS complaint number, write that number in the collection notes. As you collect the samples, fill in a line for each container you collect. The sample IDs, containers, and tests will already be completed. After you collect your sample, fill in the date and time and circle AM or PM. Sample replicate will display in the requested analysis area if multiple containers are collected for a test. Each container gets its own sample ID, but you do not need to record more than one collection date and time for the sample at that location. For this example, the address and site information was not available before collecting an investigative sample, but the project was prelogged. The sample IDs, containers, and tests will already be completed on the form. As samples are collected, fill in a line for each sample container. In the sample address and location box, print the address or general location where you are collecting your sample, and print the specific location where you took the sample. After you collect your sample, fill in the date and time and circle AM or PM. For this example, the minor public water supply system is used as the customer, but DEQ staff is assisting with the collection. The public water supply must be used as the customer so that the results are submitted for compliance and the PWS system is billed for analysis. Facility and site information for the system are used in the facility and sampling point field and can be prelogged if known before sampling. After you collect your sample, fill in the date and time and circle AM or PM. For this example, a chlorine measurement should be provided if the system uses chlorination. Circle free or total chlorine as appropriate. If the system does not chlorinate, leave the chlorine measurement blank. For this example, an investigative sample is requested. The PWS system and location, number of samples, and testing required were known before sampling and were prelogged. Field measurements can be recorded in the collection notes. As samples are collected, fill in the date and time and circle AM or PM. If you want to associate your project with a PWS system ID, make sure it is in project description. When mailing samples via postal service or courier, complete the custody portion of the form before packing up your samples and paperwork. Complete the chain of custody by printing your name and signing at the bottom of the form to relinquish your samples to the laboratory. Add the date and time that you are packaging up your samples. Place the chain of custody and payment for your analysis into the shipping container, preferably in a Ziploc style bag to keep them from getting wet in case your samples leak in transit. Make sure the lids are secure but not so tight as to break the lid. If your samples are required to be stored or shipped on ice, pack them in a cooler or container and fill with ice. Pack the samples in a way to protect them from breakage. Glass containers should be wrapped in bubble wrap or plastic. If you will be delivering your samples in person to the laboratory, You will print your name and sign the bottom of the form to relinquish your samples to the laboratory when you arrive in our sample management area. The date and time that you are giving your samples to the sample receipt staff is the relinquished time that will be recorded. If you have any questions about how to store your samples or the cost of your requested analyses, please call the laboratory.